Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTB World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two very important stories. The first, of course, relates to the 26th Constitutional Amendment that has been passed by both houses of the Parliament. And this is something historic and significant, as mentioned by the Prime Minister of Pakistan himself, where he spoke about how this is not just a legal change, but this is something that fulfills the Charter of Democracy and it brings together different political parties on the same page. And it also does fulfill the responsibility of the Parliament and the decision makers to move forward with amendments to the constitutions necessary for the peace and justice of the country and its people. It's important, of course, to talk about the kind of controversial aspects that were discussed earlier as part of these amendments and the reactions of some political parties, including the PTI, and then, of course, the stances of various political and other decision makers in terms of what aspects of this is going to impact the powers of the Parliament and the judiciary. This is, of course, something that we've discussed earlier as well, but we're going to take a look at what this means, particularly in terms of the changes to the tenure and the process of the appointment of the Chief Justice of Pakistan, and then, of course, moving forward, the formation of the constitutional benches and the way that that's going to proceed forward with hearing constitutional cases. We're going to be, of course, taking a look at what this means in terms of its impact on the judiciary and the independence of the judiciary, and then also in terms of impartiality when it comes to hearing constitutional cases. This is important in particular when we talk about the kind of history that Pakistan has seen before and how, unfortunately, a lot of this has been the reason for blame and the kind of political rhetoric that we've seen in the past against the judiciary and against the way that different parliamentarians and decision makers have exercised their rights. So that's going to be the focus of our first segment today. We're going to take a look at these amendments and the details of these amendments, and then, of course, in terms of moving forward, what exactly will be the process and who will be part of the very important 12-member committee that will, of course, be formed to appoint the Chief Justice of Pakistan from the top three senior-most judges of the country. That is going to be the focus in our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to be taking a look at the very important Indus Water Treaty between Pakistan and India, and the fact that a second review has been called by India in terms of moving forward with this particular treaty, and the way that, of course, India put forward the stance of how since 1960 this now has to be reassessed and reevaluated, and of course this links to the kind of hydropower projects that it wants to go ahead with in terms of making sure that that is what it proceeds with from its own side, of course, affecting and damaging the interests of Pakistan. What we, of course, also want to see is in terms of what exactly will be the way forward and what exactly is going to be the way in which Pakistan will be taking up this issue. And we're going to be, of course, taking a look at the way that the international courts are also going to be taking a look at this matter. We saw that the Court of Arbitration is something that India rejected in the past, and who has also rejected India's own objections to the matter. So we're going to be understanding the way that this is now going to unfold and how exactly will we be moving forward from that. That is going to be the focus in our second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Raja Faisal. We've also been joined online by legal expert and political analyst Muneeb Qadir, and also leader PML-N Ms. Uzma Kardar. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ma'am, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And we've also been joined, of course, by our analyst Farrukh Pitafi, who is joining us online today. Thank you very much, Farrukh, for joining us and being part of the debate, as always. I'll start with you, Ms. Uzma, in terms of the way that this 26th Constitutional Amendment has been passed by both houses of the Parliament, and then the ways that we have seen the Prime Minister congratulate the nation and the parliamentarians for this very important move forward. I want your take in terms of what the PML-N and, of course, other political parties feel at the moment when we talk about this very important constitutional change, and how does it add value, particularly to the Charter of Democracy that the Prime Minister has pointed out, and also in terms of the process in which it was achieved. Because, of course, while we talk about different political parties and while some have opposed it, we've also seen that leaders, particularly Mr. Bilawal from the PPP, has also praised the discussions and participation or the democratic process in the ways that this has happened. So I'd like your take on that first, please.
Thank you, Sana, for inviting me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. It is very important for Pakistan as a nation to gel together, to come together and make decisions which are based on consensus in which everybody is included. And I think this is a great day for Pakistan because the 26th Amendment has been passed, by the majority of the people sitting in the parliament who have come here with the mandate of the people, barring a few. Although they were there, there were about 10 meetings of the special constitutional parliamentary body, and they were part and parcel of all the deliberations. They said multiple times that we stand with JUI, and whatever their draft is, or whatever their suggestions are, or what they want, the changes that they want, we will go along with them. Now, what has happened? Yes, the Maulana is there with all the others because Maulana is a democratic-minded politician, and he's a seasoned politician. So he realized that give and take a little bit of compromise, but these amendments were vital for the well-being, the peace and prosperity, and judicial reforms much needed in the country. So he stood with the majority because he believed in doing things in a democratic manner. On the other hand, now this one particular party, they keep on taking, somersaults, the so-called U-turns. Now let's see how they treat the Maulana, because I fear the worst. Up till now, they've been treating Maulana as a hero. And now what they're going to do, they're going to troll the Maulana like anything, like they do everybody else, because they have no civility, no decency, no norms according to which you move ahead in society, how you respect others and you gain respect, acceptance of others, tolerance. The problem is that, their obsessive habit to lie and to propagate false news and false narratives, they're addicted to it. They don't know any other way. Can you believe it?
Right, Ms. Uzma, I also want you to help me understand what exactly is the issue here. While we talk about the opposition and the way that, of course, some of them also called it a dark day for the country, I want to understand how they have actually come to this conclusion. What really is the issue when we talk about these constitutional amendments? We've talked to legal experts in the past as well, and we'll be speaking to Muneeb, of course, about this in further detail. But they have clarified that this in no way affects the independence of the judiciary or in no way affects the impartiality of the Chief Justice of Pakistan. So I want your take on where is the issue. Our opposition is part of democracy, and we can accept that. But what is the issue? What is the stance? What is the valid argument there?
And Uzma Saiba, if you can allow me to add in as well in this question, and that is, eventually we saw that even the opposition leaders, they were of the view that, of course, they believe that these, of course, amendments, they are necessary for the system, but of course they were still avoiding to vote for it.
Ms. Uzma, you'll have to unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead.
Be all and end all of everything, and unless and until he is the Prime Minister, unless and until he has the majority in every province, Pakistan cannot flourish. Pakistan is being taken for a ride, and the parliament is just a hoax, and it does not have the mandate of the people. So you cannot do anything about this mindset. And the sad part is that he is leading his workers astray. He is poisoning their minds. I met somebody who said, oh, well, the 26th Amendment is an attack on the state. I said, no, the attack on the state took place on 9th May. And that was the attack on the state when you burnt down Jinnah House, when you attacked GHQ, when you attacked the Cardiology Institute, the Miawali Air Base, our Shohdas, you desecrated everything. So their thinking has absolutely been distorted by design. Let me tell you, let me say it again, that they have been deliberately taken in the wrong direction. And I think the worst part is they keep on saying that these amendments are there because they want to bring Qazi Faiz Isa back. Now, Qazi Faiz Isa is one of the best chief justices we've seen in Pakistan. He devolved his powers. You know, he set the example of full benches and public hearings. Everything was transparent. We have not seen that in Pakistan for a very long time. And on the other hand, they profess that, oh, well, you are trying to block Mansoor Ali Shah. Well, let me tell you this, Sana. They're the ones who made Mansoor Ali Shah controversial by saying that, well, when Mansoor Ali Shah comes, all these governments will be sent packing. So, you know, they spoil their own narrative and their own, political standing. They have no political standing anymore. I mean, but they're not pushed about public issues. These amendments, 26 amendments, have never been easy. Constitutional amendments have always been difficult. It's not easy to bring everybody together on one page. And this was not done something in a day. It kept on lingering for so many days. Why? Why? Because we did not want to bulldoze anything. We wanted everybody to be together as a nation. And because a constitutional amendment is a big thing, it affects the entire.
Absolutely. I completely understand that. Let me also bring in Muneeb in the discussion. And Muneeb, of course, we'd like your legal perspective as well, because while we have the different political parties or different parliamentarians speaking on the issue and those, of course, opposing it, I want your take for those, of course, who are being impacted or being discussed as part of this amendment as to what your take is, whether this is a cause for celebration or whether this is what the opposition keeps referring to in terms of a dark day for the judiciary. And I want your take in terms of how it helps the independence of the judiciary, how it helps the cases of the constitutional benches and constitutional matters. And add to that, another aspect that is being discussed, timing. We've discussed this before on a number of our shows in terms of different matters in the politics and the court matters of Pakistan, that timing is something that is brought up a lot and is questioned a lot. And again, once again, we saw that this was one of the factors that was being discussed. Why is that an issue?
So I think that we've been speculating for very long, I mean, for the past few weeks, as to what would the content of this 26th Constitutional Amendment package would be. And now I'm glad that the suspense is over and there are 22 clauses in the draft that was there in the Senate. And now we are aware of the contents of this constitutional amendment. So the thing is that the PTI, particularly the opposition party and those in opposition altogether, they have issues with certain provisions of this constitutional amendment, even though they have admitted the fact that, from where it was just about a month ago, the amendments have been watered down in such a way that are more acceptable even to the PTI. So what are they really taking issue at? What they're taking issue at is that somehow narratives are being framed and narratives are being put forward that executive is going to exercise a lot of control over the judiciary through these amendments, and that they are going to even trespass onto the domain of judiciary. Now, how exactly is that? I think that we need to look at some of the clauses that are being made very controversial by the PTI and those in opposition one by one. So first of all, they've taken objection to, the stipulation that a parliamentary committee shall select the Chief Justice from among the 3 senior most Supreme Court judges, whose name shall then be forwarded to the President for appointment. Now, the contention here is from those opposed to the constitutional amendments that, initially there used to be a lot of clarity and certainty as to who was going to be the next Supreme Court Chief Justice in line, which was the most senior judge, full stop. But now it will be from among the 3 senior most Supreme Court judges. And so the argument goes that there would be a lot of lobbying and hence politicization of judiciary, that they would want to appeal to the Prime Minister and to the government of the day in order to be appointed to, the much coveted position of the Chief Justice. But in response to this, I've got something to say, and that is that, even in democracies like the United States, the executive and legislature, they have a role in the appointment of the senior judiciary, have they not? So this is not something which is completely unprecedented, no less in democracies actually. The other argument that is being made out against, and why it's being said that this is the dark days, so against the constitutional amendments, another argument is that the Judicial Commission, which shall then select the rest of the Supreme Court judges, is dominated by the government. Now, we need to have a look at the composition of that Judicial Commission. It would consist of the CJP, it would consist of four senior most judges, the Law Minister, Attorney General, a Pakistan Bar Council representative, two members from the ruling party and opposition party, respectively, from both National Assembly and Senate. So when you've got representation from the opposition party as well, you've got two members from opposition party from the National Assembly and Senate, how exactly can it be said that the Judicial Commission is dominated by the government? And as for the politicization of judiciary that the opposition are so much concerned about, well, I think that it was the politicization of judiciary which necessitated these amendments in the first place. We literally had, calls being leaked where the progeny of chief justices were discussing selling tickets to contest election from the opposition party. The a certain chief justice's mother-in-law had been discussing again, issues relating to the manipulation of the judicial bench. So that was what was controversial. And now what is going to happen is that all constitutional cases would now be referred to constitutional bench. One that would have expertise over matters pertaining to constitution. What we saw before these amendments was partisanship from the Supreme Court, and that was unproductive, that was unhealthy.
Right, and Muneeb, I want one more aspect to be discussed is what Justice Mansoor Shah also actually referred to in a proceeding, talked about which matters are actually going to go to the constitutional bench, and that every time the court will have to answer these questions, and that was discussed in a lighter way, but it's an important question in terms of what exactly will be the concern when we talk about a general court hearing or a constitutional bench hearing, and how will that actually be decided? Have you figured that out?
I think that there is going to be confusion regarding that. And that is so because if looked closely, if analyzed very closely, the line to be drawn between what really amounts to constitutional case and what is an ordinary case that, the Supreme Court can deal with in the normal course of their work, that could become blurred because ultimately there is a constitutional angle to every case, particularly one which has reached the Supreme Court, because it would not have reached the Supreme Court had it not involved certain sensitive issues related to constitutionality. So yes, that would, and it's a bit unfortunate perhaps that there is no precise definition of what a constitutional case is, and that is left very much at the judge's discretion. So it could go one way or the other.
And Muneeb, if you can
Muneeb,
further elaborate related to role of the registrar of the Supreme Court, would he be playing role in terms of what case is related to the Constitution and what not?
And actually, I just wanted to add before Faisal's question, with reference to what you discussed earlier, what exactly will then be the role of the judges or the Chief Justice in actually deciding that matter? I understand the role of the presiding officer, but in terms of making that call, that this will go to the constitutional bench or not, who gets to do that?
Absolutely, that is exactly what could become contentious. That who decides, whether this is a constitutional case or whether this is one which would ordinarily be dealt with by the Supreme Court in its regular jurisdiction. I mean, moving in circles, and we would be back to square one. Perhaps it's a constitutional bench, or the same people who would be sitting on the constitutional bench would decide that, first and foremost, does this matter fall within the ambit of a constitutional case, so that its merits could then be decided upon by a constitutional bench. And answering, Mr. Faisal's question about the registrar's role, again, that needs to be seen, because the amendments don't really focus on the registrar as much. The registrar's work is mostly to assist the Supreme Court in, administrative work that comes as part and parcel of whatever the Supreme Court does on a daily basis. So I'm very sure and I'm very certain that it would be related to assisting the Supreme Court, but not really, determining or drawing the line between what's a constitutional case and what's not. That is very much the prerogative of the Supreme Court itself.
Right, absolutely. Farrukh, I want your perspective on this as well, in terms of course, the way that different political parties have actually come together for this and the process of it all, in terms of whether or not that is in itself a cause for celebration. But also add to that, of course, the clauses that we've just been discussing, and whether or not, given whatever complications or aspects that still perhaps need to be further specified, what exactly do you think will be the impact? Do you think that it helps in terms of the power of both the judiciary and the parliament, and it also helps in streamlining and putting to bay the kind of accusations or objections that different political parties have raised in the past and questioned the impartiality of the Supreme Court?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think regarding the overall situation, the first point to remember is that we belong to a country which has a Westminster-style democracy, right? And once it comes from UK. And if you remember, there is such an institution as law lords there. Essentially, upper house of the parliament actually has certain members which are judges, right? Law lords. So one has to first of all remember that in Westminster democracy, the strongest arm of the government is not judiciary, it is not the executive, it essentially has to be the parliament, from where everything is actually put together, and then things actually move forward. Now regarding various political parties coming together, the great thing at this moment is that even PTI was taken into confidence. And eventually, because PTI essentially works in a very different way compared to other political parties, it works for the audience of one, the gentleman who's sitting behind bars. So they essentially had to, while not trying to block it, also had to throw up a tantrum as well. So that was expected, and the party's name is Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. That means Pakistan's movement of justice. So naturally, you can expect that there's going to be some lip service regarding the political changes that might have taken place. Now, in parliamentary democracy, the most important thing is that it is essentially a dialogue. You make laws, and then those laws can be revised eventually. In the past, we have seen that after the last dictatorship ended in this country, there were two movements that were continuing. On one side, you had the lawyers' movement, and that actually started with one Honorable Chief Justice refusing to step aside when he was sacked. And at that time, there was a political movement that was going on as well. What happened was that the political movement culminated into 18th Amendment. And because the said Chief Justice was also reinstated, at that time he objected to certain clauses regarding the appointment of judges, and because of that, the Parliament had to rush through the 19th Amendment. Remember that when it comes to me as a citizen, the only branch that is accountable to me is not judiciary, it is not even executive, it is parliament, because whenever a vote takes place, that is the member of that body are the only people that I choose or I elect. So in this situation, and essentially because the lawyer movement continued, and we saw that repeatedly the courts kept on sacking the prime ministers that I would elect, right? Yusuf Raza Gilani was sacked, Mia Nawaz Sharif was sacked, and after that PTI's chairman was also sacked. The former chairman of the party was also sacked. So the question then is, should there be so much power concentrated into a bunch of people, which is a very limited group, and they shouldn't have that, they should have the final say, or should it be a matter of the parliament? This debate has continued and will continue. But the great point is, even right now when we speak, If somebody says that we did not need reforms in judiciary, the question then is the system working? If the system is working, Sana, why do I see so much pendency? Why is it that our honorable justices only argue and fight among themselves, and there's usually politicization? I'm supposed to take a side, and then what happens? Everybody who comes to power, they don't actually deliver to me or you, the common Johnnies. They keep on doing, continuing to do whatever they want without actually taking care of the cases which are in pendency. Remember that the system is broken, was broken at the local level, at the provincial level also, and at the center, because the Supreme Court of Pakistan, in its infinite wisdom, thinks that it should actually go for cases which are more interesting for the ticker writers and for the politicians and for the television news cycles. That's why, unfortunately, the common man's concerns are not being fixed. And then remember that Supreme Court is supposed to do another very important thing. It is the arbiter of cases between various provinces as well. And the concern that one keeps on looking at is that instead of actually focusing on these matters, the issues repeatedly go back to who is going to be the ruler, how much power which government should have, and which person should be sacked or not. So my humble summation is that while it is a dialogue, it is an imperfect dialogue, but it is better than whatever Iftikhar Chaudhry actually brought in this country through 19th Amendment, and whatever has been going on for quite some time. Yes, sir.
Right. Right, absolutely. And Faisal, I want your perspective on that as well, because while, of course, we talk about this constitutional amendment and we can laud the process, there is also a very important process that still remains, and I'll take Ms. Uzma's opinion later on that as well, is, of course, who's going to be part of that very important parliamentary committee that then actually gets to decide the appointment of the Chief Justice of Pakistan. And we have seen a couple of names being floated around, but I want your take in terms of what you think about this whole mechanism and whether or not it resolves the factor in which, of course, the reason or the essence of this constitutional amendment in terms of ensuring or empowering the judiciary or ensuring of justice and making sure that whatever is being executed by the courts cannot be brought back to any one political party or the other.
Yes, and obviously when we talk about the committee itself, I mean, there will be judges, and then of course the opposition side, and finally the government, the treasury benches
I'm talking about the parliamentary committee that has 8 members from the National Assembly and 4 from the Senate that choose the Chief Justice.
Yeah, that choose the obviously Chief Justice. Of course, it is from the Parliament itself, and be it Senate and Parliament, it is going to be, of course, will of the people that is sitting inside the legislature and legislative assembly, and I think that's how it should be. Sana, I don't know why this time around there are questions being raised on this. I mean, we know that other institutions, I mean, military is an institution, and we already know that Chief of the Army Staff, he gets obviously nominated by Prime Minister of Pakistan. And of course, how it happens, of course, there are a number of people who are in the list, and all of them, they are equally capable to, of course, rule over and lead our military. And one of them comes up and he becomes Chief of the Army Staff. Here, it should be the same, method. But unfortunately, since few years, we have been seeing that there is a division, and it's already known. I mean, we have been doing programs on benches whenever they were being formed. As soon as a bench was formed, we already knew what kind of decision we are expecting. Reason being, we already knew what kind of political affiliations or political sentiments they are having, and that would obviously make everyone believe that they are not the justice of course, Supreme Court, but some sort of an ally to a political party. So I think this kind of context about our judicial system, it should be removed forever. Reason being, an institution that is pivotal to democracy itself and to the Constitution Avenue itself. I mean, eventually, if we talk about Constitution itself and Supreme Court, Supreme Court is supposed to, of course, implement and derive justice from the Constitution itself. But over here we were, of course, facing this kind of dilemma in which we were labeling judges of having some kind of affiliation with a political party. That them sort of questions, they should be removed forever. I mean, it shouldn't be part of our sort of conversations anymore.
Right.
Reason being, a judge is supposed to be a judge, and the only problem which I see in coming days, as Muneeb has rightly pointed out, still there are confusions about how a bench is going to be formed and who is going to be forming it, and if that bench is formed, then who is going to decide that which case is a constitutional case and which is not.
And that, of course, is an important matter.
Yeah, reason being, yesterday while sitting in the Senate gallery, I was listening to one of the opposition leaders, and he raised the same questions, and he said that even there are some cases, some corporate cases or banking related cases that has everything to do with the constitutional matters.
Absolutely.
So,
this is what Muneeb also said, because everything, of course, is fundamentally reliant on the Constitution. Ms. Uzma, I want your take on the aspects of the Parliamentary Committee as well. While, of course, this is an achievement and that we've passed this amendment, but I want your take on what next and the steps to ensure that there is the full implementation in true spirit and essence in which it is envisioned. And so for that, the Parliamentary Committee and its formation and those who will be part of it will be extremely important. So I want your take first on what is the process that is being looked at in that, and what sort of discussions or consultations will be part of it to ensure that there is consensus on the matter, and with the kind of names that are floating about as well.
Allow me to make a comment, Sana. Sana, laws are made for people. People are not made for laws. So we should keep this in mind, that laws keep on evolving according to the times, changes, requirements of the people. Whenever the legislature feels that certain measures have to be taken to enhance the quality of life or to give them fundamental rights, then, these laws do come under discussion. And if we need reforms in certain ways, then again, these laws come under discussion. And with the consensus of the whole parliament, what is the parliament? What is democracy? For the people, of the people, by the people. Who sent these people here to the parliament? The people of Pakistan. So they are the collective wisdom of the people who have given them the mandate. So I don't know why people are questioning the 26th Amendment. Now, 175A is the amendment which changes the nomination or selection of the Chief Justice. What does it say? It says that 8 members will be taken from the National Assembly and 4 will be taken from the Senate, and there will be representation of all parties across the board, including all the parties sitting in the opposition. So what is the hue and cry about? You are there. You have a say in selecting the Chief Justice. So exercise that power, exercise that discretion, rather than just, criticizing for the sake of criticism. So that is what I feel, that Parliament is supreme, and there has been a lot of overstepping of boundaries. So we need to define who has what role to play as far as the Constitution is concerned. Now, rewriting the Constitution is not the ambit of the Supreme Court. That is the function of the Parliament. And we have seen this crisscrossing, which has led to constitutional crisis in Punjab, in the center. So this we have to avoid. We cannot afford this anymore.
Absolutely.
When you talk about...
I totally understand that. That's a very valid point. Yes, Ms. Uzma, quickly. Go ahead.
This debate about there's going to be confusion in which case will be heard by the constitutional bench. In my mind, there's absolutely no confusion. I'll tell you why. You see, most of the political cases will be heard in the constitutional bench, which we have been listening to, in the previous tenure, in the Good to See You tenure. There was this one particular Chief Justice who heard 70% of all political cases. And that is what led to extreme chaos and confusion. We knew what the decisions would be. We knew where they were coming from. So, I think there's more than 60,000
your point, Ms. Uzma. This is, of course, really important in terms of which cases will be heard. And I understand what you're saying. Of course, most of those cases will go to the Constitutional Bench. The argument here was only that there is that room for misconception and the room for abuse of power. But let's just go back to Mr. Muneeb as well. I want a couple of questions, Muneeb, since we're short on time. And I might have missed that, but if you can clarify for me who will be the final authority with the formation of the parliamentary committee. Will that be directly the Prime Minister or the President? Will there be a need for a two-third majority, or just a plain consensus on the matter is enough? And secondly, there is also the aspect of the political representation from all the provinces. And so I want, how will that be actually catered in these amendments? And thirdly, very quickly, if you can also comment on the very important aspect of the end of riba or interest by 2028, because while we talk about all of these issues, that's a very important development as well.
And Muneeb, you're a very busy man. The fourth one from my side, and that is related to the bench. When the bench is formed, can we say that if there is a need to change that bench, how that process would work? Or if they want to remove an individual judge and replace it with some other, is there a process?
All right. So first of all, I'll talk about the provision related to riba, but as for the questions related to parliamentary committee, how that is going to be formed, I mean, it appears one would think that there would be cross-party consensus, and that should be the guiding principle, and that should be the guiding factor as to how the committee is to be formed. And ultimately, yes, it's the president which has to give his assent to something of that, something that is as significant as that. But I do believe that it is going to be on a cross-party consensus basis. And, as Ms. Uzma Kardar also here said, she mentioned that the opposition is getting representation anyway, whether that be in the Judicial Commission or the parliamentary committee as well. So what's all the hue and cry about? In fact, I think that it's a huge missed opportunity on part of the opposition, particularly PTI is what I'm talking about. That they decided to boycott anything and everything related to the constitutional amendments. They were more busier in agitating on the streets, and they could have played a constructive role, actually, that if they believed that there were better alternatives to the constitutional amendments, which they are now criticizing, they could have, come forward and stipulated, they could have elaborated upon what they really had in mind, rather than creating controversies. It was much ado about nothing, at least on their part. Now, coming to the provinces and how the provinces are going to, get representation, that is another area where I cannot preempt what's going to happen and how that is going to be done, and that is best left to those who do and who are envisaging those amendments. And then finally, I think, related to the riba provision. Well, for a very long time, this has been going on. And for a very long time, political leaders, one after the other, successive governments have promised that they would end this and that this is not in compliance with Sharia banking system. Well, one would hope that they would deliver on the promise, and it's part of the constitution now. It's a constitutional amendment, which makes it all the more important. So again, time will tell how well and through what mechanisms do they honor their promise that they've made now as part of their commitment under the constitutional amendments package.
Right. Thank you very much, Muneeb, for joining us. And thank you, Ms. Uzma Kardar, for joining us and being a part of the debate. That's the end for our first segment. We'll also quickly take a look at the Indus Water Treaty and the second notice that has been issued by India in terms of a reassessment. And Farrukh, I want your take on this, because this is, of course, something that is considered very important and very historic in terms of a peace agreement and a water treaty that was brokered by the World Bank. But in terms of where we stand today and in terms of the developments, particularly in the hydropower generation sector by India, the development of power plants on their side is affecting, of course, and damaging the interests of Pakistan. So I want to understand first this notice, what this means, particularly when, of course, we talked about the Court of Arbitration. It was something that was skipped by India, and India's objections were also rejected. This was last year, I believe. And so I want your take on what this would mean and what will be the next steps, and whether or not a reassessment is necessary.
Right, Sana, thank you very much once again. I think that at this moment we have a dearth of time, so I'm going to stick to the basic commentary. Regarding India's attitude when it comes to IWT, recently we were hoping that because we felt that the ice is melting, because there's a foreign minister was in Pakistan, there's going to be some substantial incremental increase in qualitative dialogue or interactions with the country, between the two countries. But what we have seen is that India seems to be going through a lot. Whenever you have so much pain, you keep on acting weirdly because of whatever is going on between India and Canada, between India and America, between India and even Australia and other Five Eyes countries. Because of that, it seems that they are not capable of taking a position which is relaxed. Now, you pointed out that they actually skipped PCA. They actually boycotted PCA because they thought that they actually disputed the ability of that court to be impartial. And this is amazing because it is India that keeps on going to various fora, and then it tries to scuttle the process as well. Now, regarding the second hearing, I think that it isn't going to create a lot of problems. It is merely a formality. They'll keep on pushing. Eventually, these issues will have to be resolved on a table between India and Pakistan, if ever that is the case. Regarding India's installation of various power generation places and these dams, the problem is not merely that India wants to actually install such dams there, but it wants to control the flow of water where there is an agreement that Pakistan gets the water. It's from those resources. So because of that, of course, India will keep on using whatever it has got to continue to actually wreak havoc. But in the end, my humble submission is that it is just India behaving the way it would because of so much trauma it has actually inflicted upon itself.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Farrukh. Faisal, quickly your take on that as well, and especially after what Farrukh also pointed out, the SEO and what seemed to be certain thawing of relations. What does this mean, and how do we actually tackle this issue? Because it has been affecting Pakistan for quite some time.
Yes, and obviously there are two reasons behind it, as Farrukh has rightly pointed out, that one of them is that of course diplomatically India is being bashed, and rightly so, because the kind of activities they were involved in, them activities, they need to be of course condemned, and that's how it should be. And second one is, currently there is an international arbitrator from France who is currently in India, and he is obviously doing research on this Indus Water Treaty, and of course there are certain issues which are being dealt with, especially related to the flow of water which has been disturbed by India itself. And I am coming to know this by one of my sources there, that he has raised these questions about disturbance of the flow of the water which is supposed to come to Pakistan, and it is being done by India itself, and he has already done so, and that is why these kind of lame excuses and lame kind of questions which are being raised by India, because India wants to portray as if they have a lot to talk about as well. But as Farrukh has mentioned, and I would fully agree with him, eventually all of these matters, they need to be resolved on the table, and I think once for all they need to be resolved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us and being part of the debate. As always, that's all that we have from the show today. We'll now see you tomorrow.